Welcome to The Real Heal. I am your host, Dr. Renee Wallenstein, also known as the Libidoologist. So if you're ready, let's get into it. Audrienne, I am so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to be here.
And, you know, in the true nature of how I want this podcast to flow in 2023, we're talking about things that aren't necessarily what you would think about when we talk about holistic health, but they're very much a part of optimal health. And this is exactly the reason why I wanted to expand on those typical, nutrition and exercise and sleep and all the things, and talk about topics that are a little bit deeper. And that's what we're going to absolutely do today. But before we get into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got doing what you're doing today?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm Dr. Audrienne MacIain, and I specialize in creative flow. And what that means is really just helping you to realign to your natural creative process so that you can create and innovate with ease and enjoyment in all areas of your life. All of our interconnected systems really rely on that spark of imagination, curiosity, creativity. And this is something that from a very young age, unfortunately, in this society, we are taught that's childish, it's not important, it's frivolous. And so we are cut off from the source of our energy. And I think that's really a tragedy. So I'm here to help correct that. I write books mostly for adults, but I just wrote one for kids because I really want us to start thinking about these things at a young age, having kind of a should shield to say, I know you're going to tell me a bunch of stuff that I should want to do or should think or should feel. And I am prepared to tell you, no, thank you. I'm going to keep doing things the way it works for me.
I love that. And I see you're a PhD. So how does a person get into creative flow? Like, how do you study this kind of
Such a great question. Obviously, it was not my area of study in college. I actually got my PhD in theater, of all things.
Oh.
And so I've always been a creative person. I've always been a writer. I was a playwright for a while. I've written lots of different kinds of things. But what I've discovered is that the more I expand my creativity, the more, like, the deeper I can go into what really matters to me and discovering my deepest desires. I use the word desire on purpose. I know it squicks some people out because they associate it with like romance novels or something. But here's the thing about desire. I'm a big word nerd, so you'll hear me say things like this a lot. Desire comes from decidere, of the stars. And so it's actually connected to destiny. Your desire is like the GPS signal that leads you to your destiny, what is written in the stars for you. And so I think it's so tragic when we cut ourselves off and judge our own desires and think that's not important enough, or that's not good enough, or that's not worthy of my time and attention. And as soon as we do that, guess what happens? Not only are we disconnected from that thing that we really want, but we get disconnected from wanting anything. Because when you don't acknowledge the thing that you actually want, you don't want anything, right? It's like when you say to someone, if you're craving something, like if you are really craving, like, I need pizza, like now, right? And somebody offers you like, oh, do you want a salad? Do you want this? Do you want that? You're like, no. You don't want anything except that thing. And so when you find that you can't, when I talk to people and they say, I don't know what I want, I always kind of chuckle to myself a little bit because I think, yeah, you do. You know exactly what you want, but you think you can't have it. And so you've cut yourself off from that. And so now you don't want anything. So now nothing sounds good. And that is where depression and anxiety come from, because we've cut ourselves off from believing, from that hope that we can have the thing that we really, really want for ourselves.
And why have we done that? Like, because we've been told that we're not good enough, or like, because I can totally see that.
Yes.
And I love the food analogy because I'm a big foodie. I love food. And when I want a pizza, I don't want anything else but the pizza.
That's right. You want the dang pizza. Exactly.
So I totally
it's got to be like the pizza in your mind too, right? It can't be like a pepperoni if you wanted it with like feta cheese and olives, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I can totally see like equating that to other things in life of like, you want something, but then you're either thinking you can't get it, can't have it, for whatever reason. And, then you think of something else. You're like, yeah, no, that doesn't light me up as much. So, so why?
What I really encourage people to do too is to focus on the feeling. So maybe you've gotten hung up on like, well, I need this thing, right? Like I need this new car and I can't afford it. And so I can't be happy. It's like looking in the mirror and seeing that your expression is sad and then taking, a Sharpie and trying to draw a smiley face on the mirror and then wondering why you still don't feel better. You can't change the world and then expect it to affect what's going on in here. You can't change your circumstances and expect that to make you feel better. You have to change your face to change your reflection. And the world is just a reflection of how you feel in here. Your experiences, your situation is a reflection of what's going on in here. And so we have to change this first. So when you ask, why do we do this thing where we cut ourselves off from our desired feelings? It comes from this culture. It comes from these messages that we get from a very young age that there are certain things that are important. There are certain things that are grown up. There are certain things that make you responsible, right? And these are the things that you're supposed to want. These are the things that make you successful. And if you aren't focused on those things, then you are not a success and you are not a grown up and you are not responsible, blah, blah, blah. It's all BS. The truth is that we are all individual and our core desired feelings are uniquely our own. And we have unique gifts to help us get to those things. And if we are not giving our gifts to the world to get our core desired feelings in exchange for those things, then not only are we not doing what we need to do to get what we want in the world, but we are not giving people what we have to give that nobody else has. Now, I'm not saying that your gifts and talents are like completely unique and nobody in the world has ever had anything like them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that your unique energy, right? The thing that makes you you is different. And the way that you go about giving these gifts and sharing these ideas and these stories and these experiences that you have experienced is unique. So yeah, it's all been said. It's all been done. There is nothing that you could write about or talk about that somebody else in the world hasn't thought of and probably said something about. But here's the difference. Have you ever had like maybe your husband says something to you or your parents says something to you over and over again and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then a friend or somebody says it to you and you're like, oh my gosh, that is so brilliant. Like, I never thought about that. And your husband is like, what? I say that to you all the time, right? It's because the way that person was saying it wasn't resonating with us. And we needed that other person's voice, that other person's perspective, that story that they told us or whatever it was to make us go, oh my gosh, I get it now. I can apply this to my life now. And so I really encourage everyone out there, whatever it is, if it's, whatever gives you energy to do for other people, that is your gift. That is your strength. A strength isn't necessarily something that we're really, really good at or that we have a lot of experience in. Those are skills, and skills are important, and we can use our skills to help solve problems for the people that we care about. Absolutely. But our gifts, our authentic gifts, are those things that it gives us more energy back to give them away. And when you can figure out how to get yields back in exchange for giving those gifts that really feel resonant and juicy to you, that's when you've really found happiness. That's really the key, I feel, to long-term wellness. Our creativity, okay, let me talk about creativity for a second.
Good, yeah. Because I was going to ask you about creativity because, you don't think there's such a thing as creatives and non-creatives. So
I do not. I feel really strongly about this, actually. People have been trying to put me in the creatives box for a really long time. Like, oh, well, you're a creative. And that means something. And usually what that means is we're going to pay you less, is what that actually means. So it really bothers me when people segregate humans into creatives and non-creatives, because as human beings, it is part of our most basic functioning to be able to create things that don't yet exist in our reality. So we have the capacity to imagine something that does not yet exist in this reality and create it. That's our magic as human beings. No other animals do that. No other earthlings do that. We have this special capacity. We can create tools. We can create solutions to problems in this real world that we live in, just by thinking about something and then taking action on it, right? Now, you might not think of yourself as an imaginative person, right? Maybe you don't have the capacity to really visualize things very clearly. Not everybody does, but that doesn't mean that you're not a creative person. Some people express their creativity in problem solving. Some people express their creativity in pulling together disparate ideas from different disciplines and putting them together. We all express our creativity differently, but I guarantee you, everyone has their own innovation, their own creativity. And so in order to really innovate and create solutions that really matter in the world, right? I'm not just talking like draw a pretty picture. Drawing pretty pictures is wonderful, and it can actually solve problems too in its own way. But I'm talking about, like, if you actually want to solve a problem that is plaguing you, that is plaguing people that you care about, you are going to need to tap into your creativity, because there's two ways of thinking. Okay. There's insight and there's outsight. Now, outsight is actually what we usually do. Like, this is what we're taught in school. It's taking things outside of ourselves, data, collecting it, putting it into an order, putting it into a formula, right? And getting a solution. This is the mathematical sense of solution, right? It's something that already exists that we are then just putting the pieces together to find it, right? It will never create something new. It cannot, by definition. And so if you want to create something that doesn't yet exist, if you want to create a solution that doesn't yet exist in the world, you cannot use outsight. It will not work for you. You have to use insight. And what insight is when we allow our conscious mind to stop, to stop turning those wheels and allow us to tap into our collective unconscious, to tap into the wisdom that we all have as humans. I like to call it genius. People think of genius as something that's like, a super smart person. But actually, if you look at the roots of genius, it goes back to Greek times when a genius, it was like a djinn, okay? It's an unseen entity that like lives in your walls and helps you come up with ideas. It is something that is all around us. It's an energy that we all can tap into. We all have this in common. We all have this ability, but we need to get out of our own way and stop trying to think our way out of a situation. And we need to start feeling the solution. And this is why you get your best ideas when you're in the shower. This is why you get your best ideas when you're on a walk, right? It just comes to you. And so an insight is that kind of download that comes to you suddenly and you go, oh, holistically, I now understand this. Now, people who rely on insight had a really hard time in school. Us intuitive types, right? We had a really hard time in school because our teachers said, well, how did you come up with this answer? I don't know. It just feels right. And they said, well, then you probably cheated. And now I'm labeled a criminal, right? And this is especially dangerous for people of color. When they get labeled a criminal, things get really ugly. And so intuitive people of color out there, I want you to know, okay, it's not your fault. It is not about you. It is about this system that we grew up in. I went really off topic there. What I really wanted to talk about.
Totally, like, I have so many like ideas, like ding, 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 I should write them all down.
What I really wanted to talk about there was actually unused creativity and how dangerous this can be. So when we are not putting our creativity to use, when we are not connected to our insight, to source energy, here's what happens. Creativity is like a border collie. It is a wonderful pet if you put it to work, if you put it to good use, if you give it a task and say, go do this thing, it will create amazing stuff for you. But if you don't, if you ignore it, if you try to like just go to work and leave it at home, guess what will happen? It will chew up your shoes. It will tear down your curtains. It will pee on your bed sheets. It will create a nightmare in your home, right? Because creative energy is restless and it wants to be put to use. And so if you find yourself playing out a lot of dramas that are totally unnecessary, if you find yourself creating problems for you to solve, it's probably because you don't have a regular creative outlet. You don't have a regular creative flow. You will find if you do, and I'm talking, it could be the simplest thing, like just journaling for like 3 minutes every day. That's it. Or not even every day. Journal for 3 minutes a week. I don't care. Have something regular, something routine that you go back to that is create a creative outlet for you, whatever that may be. It could be that one night, you know, let's say you cook dinner every night, and one night a week you throw out the recipe and you just wing it, right? Whatever it is that really lights your creative fire, commit to doing that regularly, and it will change your life. I promise you.
I love that. You know, it's funny as you're talking, like couple things. Number one, like I've never seen creatives as like, I've always labeled myself as not a creative because I have been very science, like black and white thinking for my entire life. That's how I always say trained, you know, like that's how,
right.
you know, we go through school and then I went to college, then I went to medical school, and it's very much right answer, wrong answer. There's no in between.
It's outside,
right?
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting. I had an injury, almost 11 years ago now. And shortly after that injury, a couple of years later, I had a major career change, and it was because of this. I always call it the gut feeling. Like all of a sudden I had this, like, you've got to do this. And I've had that my entire life. I've always like suppressed it because I'm like, what's this going on? Like, there's no logic to this.
Yes.
It is completely illogical. That is, people call me crazy if I do whatever that in the past. And now it partly is because I was in very much of a black and white world for the longest time. And this new career was a little bit of like, not black, white. There's a lot of in between. And I wanted to explore that in between, which potentially is where my intuition said, yes, do it. And I have, since that day, and that was probably 9 years ago, I've always listened to my intuition. And again, sometimes it's scary, and it's like, what am I doing? And it's like, it doesn't make sense. But people ask you, like you say, even with the questions, with the answers, like why? And I'm like, I have no idea. There's just something, I have to do this, or, you know, I have to go this way, or I have to whatever. And I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, that fear is a really important message. Okay. So when you feel that resistance, that fear, right? You're scared because you care. That is a message telling you this is important to you. This is something that matters to you. And that's why you're scared about it. And so that's a good sign. That's like a big neon sign that says, this way, this way. The treasure you seek is in the cave that you fear. And so as soon as you discover a cave that's like, ooh, I'm excited. I'm kind of excited, but I'm also really terrified. Like, what is behind this? That is absolutely what you need to be focused on right now.
I love that.
And you got to give yourself so much grace, because honestly, it's terrifying. Like, I don't want to underplay that at all. It is the scariest thing to be so brave and so vulnerable to say authentically, I desire this. My intuition is telling me go this way, and it doesn't make any logical sense. And everyone around me is telling me you're nuts. Don't do that. Like, how badass and brave do you have to be to do it anyway?
I love
But
that.
every time you do, I promise you, you leap and the universe catches you. Like, yeah, it's going to be rough. And the only way out is through. Like, once you go into that cave, there's no going back. You don't get to like step back out and go, just kidding, I didn't mean it. Like, you got to go all the way through. But once you do, you level up. You level up as a person, and you find yourself in this whole new world of going, I didn't even know this was an option. I didn't even know these were possibilities. It's like you go through that first door, and then there's all these other doors, you know, but you have to you have to take that leap. You got to go, okay, I'm scared because I care, and I'm doing it anyway.
Now, our audience today is probably, there's a lot of people out there that feel stuck, whether it be, somewhere in their life, something.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're hearing us talk about this, and they're getting a little glimmer of hope of like, oh yeah, I dreamed of this, and I felt like I should do this, but I didn't. And they're also hearing us say words like source energy and intuition. And they're thinking, oh, they're talking woo-woo stuff here. Like, tell us why this is not woo-woo. Like,
absolutely. So, okay, maybe it is a little woo-woo, and that's okay. That's one thing I've really come to terms with is like, yeah, I'm a little woo-woo and I'm cool with that. Because what I've discovered is that this stuff works.
Yeah,
it works. You can call it whatever you want, but if it works, then it works. And this is the one thing I've learned more than anything. And I've worked with C-suite executives, CEOs, COOs. I've worked with some really high performing people and teams. And I will tell you, these are not woo-woo people, okay? But I've used this stuff with them and it works for them too. And what they discover is that what works for them works. And what doesn't work for them doesn't work, period, end of sentence. And so what I really encourage you to do is not do exactly what I do, right? But to experiment, to listen to your intuition, to that little voice inside your own head that knows things that you have forgotten, right? Our brain can only hold so much information at one time. It's like a little looking glass, right? It can only focus on one thing at a time. And so there's all this vast universe of knowledge that we do have access to, but we can only focus on one thing at a time. And here's what I find fascinating about us humans. Here's what we do. We focus on what we don't want. Right? We do this all the time. We have this one little piece of focus and we're choosing to focus on the one thing that we don't want. And then we wonder why it keeps coming up in our lives. So I like to think of the universe like a Netflix algorithm. Go with me on this. If you see a show on Netflix, a story that you don't like, right? And you're like, ugh, that really squicked me out. I did not enjoy that. I don't want to experience that again. Imagine what would happen if you typed into Netflix, hey, I really didn't like this show. Please don't show me shows like this anymore. Guess what happens? You get a flood of shows like this on your page, right? Because the universe only speaks in keywords, just like Netflix. And the keywords that it speaks in are feelings. And so if you are focusing on this feeling that you don't want anymore, you will feel more and more and more of it. And so the only way to flip that script is to deliberately type into that little search function stuff you want to see more of, the shows that you really want to be focused on, the stories that you want to experience in this life. And so maybe it is woo-woo, maybe it's just technology that you don't understand yet, but I know that this is how the universe works because I've seen it play out with clients of all stripes, from the super data-driven to the like astrology loving psychics. Okay. It works for everyone. What we got to do is really focus in, hone in on what are those core desired feelings? What do we want to feel and experience? And just keep focusing relentlessly on those things. And then they come up, these opportunities come up, these synchronicities start to show up. Right. And then it gets scary. And then you have resistance and you go, oh, big, scary opportunity that I'm not ready for. But guess what? You are, or it wouldn't have come up. So go for it.
I love it. It's interesting. Again, I may have been that person like 11 years plus ago that like thought, oh, intuition, woo. Like, I don't even know if I knew what it was because I just didn't have time to slow down enough to feel. Like I was just a doer. I wasn't a feeler. I had feelings, but I suppressed them. And that's what a lot of docs do. Like they don't feel, they just do. We're big robots that, we're programmed to make a diagnosis and prescribe medications. And in my case, I was programmed to deliver babies and operate. But I have really explored over the past 9 years since I've really tapped into this. And I told myself the story that I wasn't a creative because I was very, I had that type of my part of my brain doesn't work and this and that. But I found that when I did certain things, I use the word download as well. I get downloads, and it's
Yes.
shower and it's
Hmm.
walks outside specifically. Those two
Yes.
things are like my biggest. My poor assistant gets the most messages or used to when I was on walks because all these things would come and she's like, whoa, 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 what is going on? I'm like, I'm on a walk. And, because I think a lot of us think, even with problems, we're going to talk about problem solving, but like
Yes.
if I have a problem or I want to create something, I can't sit at my desk and say, okay, create and just wait for
Hmm.
something to come. I can't. I literally have to get up and have fun, do something I love. Because those are the two I love bathing. I love water. I love taking long hot showers and baths,
Absolutely.
but I also love being outside and walking.
So
And
you said the word doer, and so I want to show you
yeah,
something.
yeah,
So this is my little creative cycle chart. Okay. And we have
yep.
DOER, but what
Okay.
that stands for is dreaming, organizing, executing, and revising. And
Mm,
this is the cycle, and it continues and continues and continues. And that dreaming part, that's the part where we need to just be.
mm,
We can't do anything yet because we don't know what we're supposed to be doing. We
mm,
haven't received the
mm,
instructions yet.
mhm,
And so we just need to make ourselves kind of fertile ground for an idea to be
mhm,
planted in.
mhm,
So here's the thing about ideas. They need us as much as we need them.
mhm,
Ideas like, genius, they are out there, right? Like you might come up with an idea at the exact same time as somebody else around the world, right? This actually happens a lot, that new technologies suddenly come into the world, poof, at the same time in several different areas of the world.
mhm,
So you might be given this idea, but what you do with it, how you interpret it, that is all you.
mm,
And so to receive those ideas, we need to be in the right space, right? We need to be open to receiving ideas. And so you're talking about, being in the shower, going for a walk. One of my favorite little phrases is, to solve a pressing problem, stop pressing on the problem.
mhm,
And what I mean by that is that if you are, let's say, sitting at your desk, like I know you've had this experience where you're working on a project and it's a slog and it's not going the way it was supposed to go. And maybe your technology isn't working right, especially during Mercury retrograde, shout out, right? You're just like frustrated with it and you want to get it over with. And so you're pushing and you're pressing on it and you're trying to get through it. You are not going to get the results that you are looking for in a
mhm,
situation like that.
mhm,
As soon as you feel that stress press, right, where you're stressing and you're pressing, trying to get through it fast, the moment you feel that, step away from
mhm,
whatever it is that you're doing. Just step away from it, leave it alone, go for a walk, take a shower, take a bath, do some yoga, whatever it
mhm.
is, something pleasant and
Yep.
physical. These are two really important pieces of this puzzle. And there is actual neuroscience to back this up. Okay. When you get into your body and allow it's like there's the brain and the gut brain, right?
Mhm,
When you allow the gut brain to take over a little bit so that you are more in an intuitive space and you're allowing your body to just do what it does without you having to consciously process. Like when you're walking, you're not thinking about, okay, pick up the foot, set it in front of the other foot. Now pick up this foot. You're not going through consciously all of that stuff. And so you're
mhm,
putting yourself into an unconscious space
mhm,
by doing this familiar task. It could be washing the dishes. I don't care, whatever it is,
mhm,
knitting, right? Something physical that allows your conscious mind to unhook.
mhm,
That's the key. And I really recommend that you do it having something to do with the elements. So that's why water is
mhm,
really, really useful.
mhm,
Being outside, if you especially are in the woods, like near trees, if you can walk barefoot, that's
mhm,
extra juicy. But anytime that you can really be around the elements and
mhm,
in that physical space of just like allowing your conscious mind to unhook, here's what happens. Your mind is like a snow globe and it's all like, and so you have to allow the snowflakes to settle.
Mhm.
And once they start to settle, then these connections start to get made.
Mhm.
Because when you are focusing all your energy in one area of like, I'm trying to figure this out, I'm trying to solve this problem, your mind is totally focused again on this one aspect. You're focused on the problem. You're not focused on a solution.
Mhm.
And again, if you're typing the problem into your little Netflix search function, guess what you're going to get more of? The problem.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so you need to allow yourself to get into a frame of mind where a solution can come to you.
Mhm.
And that is a holistic idea that comes to you because it already exists somewhere, just not here in this reality right now.
Mhm.
And so we just need to kind of open ourselves to that possibility, and then it can come to us. And that's when we can develop it, organize it, right? Plan, research, learn more about it, execute on it, create something from it. And then we iterate on it. We look at
Mhm.
it and we go, how is this working? Can I make it better? We
Mhm.
revise it, and then we let it go. We
Mhm.
release it to the world and allow ourselves to be, again, fertile soil for something new to come to us. And we do this again and again and again. And that beautiful cycle has that yin energy, that feminine energy built into it. The self-care is built into the cycle. So you don't have to separate work and life, and you don't have to separate self-care and other people care.
Mhm.
Like, it's all part of the cycle. And if you can just feel your own cycle and start to notice it,
Mhm.
that's all that I ask of you, is just
Mhm.
start to become aware of what your own body is telling you.
Mhm.
Like, right now, I want to rest. Right now, I don't want to be doing something, right? Listen to those signals, because that will tell you, okay, here's the part of the cycle that I'm on right now.
Mhm.
And then you can kind of catch a wave, right? And flow with the rest of the cycle.
Mhm.
And you can trust that you will get to the doing part. I promise you will. And it will go so much more smoothly and quickly. Like when you go for a walk and then you come back to that project, then it's a breeze, right?
Mhm.
Because you've allowed yourself to let go of that stress and the pressing. And it's like you come up with this new perspective on it. And now it's smooth sailing.
Yep. And so
Happens
many
every time.
people don't take the time to go
No.
to bathe, to go out for that walk, and they're just sitting there chained to their desks wondering why the problem is not going to get solved, or the solution, or
Yes.
or what they have to do next is not coming to them. And so
And
like
then we
you were
get addicted to that stress, right?
yeah.
It becomes our normal. And
Mhm.
we don't feel like we can function without it. We feel like something's wrong.
Mhm.
So as soon as we, like that feeling when you leave the house and you're like, I must have forgotten something, right? And you're stressed out and you're worried about it. It's like that's the normal feeling now. And if we
Mhm.
don't feel that, then we think we must be being irresponsible. We must not care enough.
Mhm.
And that's
Yep.
nonsense. It's
Yep.
nonsense.
Yep. And so, you were talking before about how, like trying to envision how you want to feel, or like
Mhm.
even like you say, like a solution to a problem. Like a lot of people like, okay, I want to feel this way, or I want this, as opposed to what they don't want, but they don't know how they're going to get that. And that's where this outlet comes, right?
Yes.
That's why getting outside. Like, and the other thing I just want to ask you, because I've noticed personally that for the listeners, like it doesn't necessarily mean that like, okay, I have this problem or I need to come up with this thing. Let me go take a 5-minute walk, 10-minute walk, 30-minute walk, and I'm going to have it. Like sometimes for me, it takes days. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
sometimes can't have a deadline. Like I just need to let it flow. And when I'm least expecting it, boom, there it is.
Absolutely. Especially if it's a big problem, like
Mhm.
something that you've been working on for a while. Yeah, it can take some time. But what I can guarantee is that you will get a hit of
Mhm.
good feeling
Mhm.
by doing that, by
Mhm.
giving yourself the gift of saying you are worthy
Mhm.
of feeling good
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
Even with the deadlines, even with everything that's like pressing in on you from the outside, you are worthy of feeling good in this moment.
Mhm.
You will get a yield. And so I use the word yield a lot because people really get hung up on certain kinds of yields. Like it has to be a financial yield, or, it doesn't. It can be any kind of yield that really feels good to you. Okay. So if you get a hit of any of your core desired feelings, that's a win. That's a win.
Yeah.
The work of living this life is to feel the way we want to feel, despite all of the very good reasons why we shouldn't. Despite all the invitations that the world will give you not to feel that way anyway. Because like I said, the universe speaks the language of feelings. And so if you are able to kind of vibrate with that feeling and resonate that outward, the universe will send you more of it, and it will resonate to the people around you. It will give them permission to feel that way too, and to get more of those feelings for themselves and the people around them. It's a ripple effect that goes out and out and out. But it is so challenging. I want to make that so clear. Like, I'm not saying, all you have to do is feel good. No, it is challenging. It is really challenging in that moment when you have a deadline and you've got the stress and you've got the, the bills that need to be paid and all of these things, to feel the way you want to feel anyway. So hard. So hard. And to trust that it just by going for a walk, taking care of yourself, giving yourself this good feeling, you will get the things that you want. That takes some faith, and faith is hard. It's really hard. And especially, like you said, when it is against all of this teaching and this training and programming that we have gotten growing up, it's so hard. It is the work.
You answered my question, because my next one is going to be like, okay, you're making it sound so easy, but I know a lot of people, listeners out there, are thinking like, I have everything against me right now. Maybe it's finances, maybe it's something and right, just not one thing. Like it's finances and a relationship and
absolutely
maybe a disease condition, and it's like, and you want me to choose to feel good? Like, how do I do that? And like you said, it's work. It's work.
It's work, and it's it's satisfying work when you do it. But it's work. And what will work for you, I don't know, darling. This is why you need to experiment. This is why you need to take the time to play. And I use the word play very particularly. Okay. We talk a lot about practice, right? And how important it is to practice, like in a growth mindset situation, right? Like practice makes perfect, and you got to show up for your practice. Yes. And you need to play. You need to play and experiment and see how things feel to you. Because what feels good to me might not feel good to you. And what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow. And so it really is this matter of find the tools that do work for you and use them, and then keep experimenting. Try something new.
Yeah. By playing, you mean do something that makes you feel good.
I mean, try something different, because play is experimental by its very nature, right? There are rules of play, so we can give ourselves a creative constraint. I give this advice all the time to my authors, right? I work with a lot of authors. I give them a creative constraint, which is like, okay, you can only start sentences with the letter A. Or you can only write sentences that are 5 sentences long. Right? 5 words long. You give yourself these arbitrary rules, and then it becomes a game. And now you're playing. And the reason that it works is because, like, if I said to you, hey, tell me a story right now, tell me a story. You're like, a story about what? Right? We need to narrow it down, because otherwise there's just too many possibilities, and our creative energy just goes, I don't know what to do. And so that's why we have these focus points. We know what we're supposed to be doing right now because of where we are in that cycle. And so we know where to focus our creative energy. And so this is a creative constraint. We give ourselves a focal point. And by going for a walk or taking a shower, again, we've given ourselves a creative constraint. These are the rules of this game that I've decided to play. Now you can play a literal game. Absolutely. Like if there's a certain kind of game that you enjoy, wonderful.
Mhm.
However, I really warn against becoming addicted to like computer games or games on your phone, anything that requires like input. Okay. Games that require you to do more output are what is best. And so this is like, if you are doing, like a crossword puzzle or something like that, it requires a lot of like output and creative engagement with your own mind. But there's a lot of games where it's sort of like just watching a TV show, right? And again, you can take in a lot of input and then like let it kind of simmer and come up with something great. Like listening to podcasts and watching shows can be great, but you also need to bake into that cycle that part where you don't take in any more input and you just allow what's already in there, like the snow globe, to sort itself out and settle. Otherwise, it's like staying up for too many days in a row. We need that time to dream and to synthesize everything that we've taken in. And so sometimes we need to daydream during the day because we've just become too overwhelmed with inputs. And especially in our culture right now, there is so much constant input. We are constantly bombarded by information and input. And so we really need to schedule into our lives those things where we are doing nothing that requires input. So again, something physical, something enjoyable. Exercise is really wonderful as long as it's exercise that you genuinely enjoy. If you are forcing yourself to do something because you think it's good for you, that energy is not the right energy to invite intuitive hits.
Totally agree.
Anytime you are fighting against yourself, right? So just be really, really rigorously, honest with yourself first. Make sure that you're not doing something because of a should. And so what I mean by a should is anytime you think, well, I should do this, or I should want to do this, that's even worse, right? Like, oh, well, I should want that, but you don't. And there's a reason for that.
Yep.
Trust it.
So you're giving the listeners permission to not have to should all over themselves.
Do not should on yourself.
And number
Absolutely.
two, listen to what they want, listen to their bodies. A lot of the women I work with, again, they're all doers. They're just programmed, right? They're like little robots that have been doing the same thing over and over. And, to ask them like physically how they feel, I don't know. Like, how does this food make you feel? I don't know. Like, what do you want to eat? I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
What do you know? I don't know. Like, they're just so disconnected. And, I think it's loud and clear here that you're sort of driving home the point of like, big part of this is reconnecting to self and what you need.
It's the biggest part of this, self-trust, trusting your own body's signals, trusting your own mind, trusting, yes, we can, the stories that we tell ourselves are not always true, right? You don't always have to trust those. But here's what you can do. You can listen to that story and ask yourself, why am I telling myself that story? Why is that coming up? Where did this come from? Where did this should come from, right? Whose value was put upon me in this should? And how can I flip that to be something that really resonates for me? So one thing that, here's a little trick for transforming negative self-talk that I've learned for myself. Whenever I find myself getting down on myself and saying, oh, you really screwed that up, or whatever it is, I add on the end, and that's awesome because. So I find the reason why I am doing whatever it is that I'm doing. So let's say I say, oh, I ate too much. And that's awesome because I really wanted to nourish my body and I wanted to allow myself to just forget about like, the rules and just have a playful, fun time. Whatever it is, you can find a spin on it. Like, I screwed that up, and that's great because now I'm learning such an important lesson, and I will do so much better next time. And I'm allowing myself this grace and this self-growth, and that is beautiful. So just allow yourself to recognize that, like, yeah, you're going to screw up like a lot. If you're not screwing up, you're not putting yourself into enough new, interesting situations. You are not challenging yourself enough, and you're not going to grow. You're going to be stuck.
Staying safe.
Exactly. But it's not safe. That's the other thing. Like,
Well,
we talk about, you know, the
yeah.
comfort zone. It's not really comfortable. You're not really comfortable there. It's just the familiar zone. It's the certain zone, right? We don't like uncertainty.
I was just talking about that yesterday. Yep. On my stories, like we like to be certain. That's safe, quote safe, you know,
quote unquote safe.
We know that we're going to succeed, or we're going to do well, or we're going to, you know, when we don't know that, we don't want to do whatever that thing is, right? So let's just talk a little bit about productivity, because you recommend that because again, I have an audience of doers, high achievers. They're very productive, myself included.
Absolutely.
But you say, forget the productivity, just show up for the process and enjoy every moment of it. Now, that's a little bit of a mic drop here. And the audience is like, what did she just say? But like, how do
Let me tell you,
where do we even begin? How do we enjoy the process? We're like, we got to get this done and this done and this done.
Okay. Productivity is focused on the product, right? But you don't even know what that product might be or could be yet. You don't even know all the possibilities that are out there. And so you've limited yourself immediately by saying, this is the product that I want at the end of this thing. And so now I'm being productive. And if I don't reach that specific goal, I have failed. Everything is about managing expectations, right? If you have a certain expectation and you don't hit that specific mark, now you're a failure. And all of that time and frustration and everything feels wasted. And this is the mindset that I was in for, you know, most of my life. I got this PhD, right? And to be, you know, in a PhD program, you have to be very like results driven, product oriented. And then when I left, I decided like, this isn't really working for me. I want to do things a different way. And what I figured out was this kind of cycle, right? And I started to see it just playing out in different ways. I noticed that like, this is how the seasons work, and this is how the lunar cycle works. And this is how nature actually creates. And nature doesn't burn out, and nature doesn't like decide, oh, you know, I'm too tired for spring this year. Just not going to happen. Like spring delivers every time, right? And it's never exactly the same, but it's always predictably going to happen. And so since then, I have published a bunch of books, right? I have built a business that I love, that I absolutely love. I have transformed my life from the inside out. And the way that I did it was just by showing up consistently for my process and enjoying the hell out of it. So think about this. There's a really popular book right now, Atomic Habits. Okay. It's like #1 on Amazon and has been for like forever. I'll tell you the TLDR of that whole book. If you enjoy your process, you will create a habit out of it. And then you don't even have to think about it anymore. So here's the magic. When we create a ritual, a routine that is fun and easy for us to show up to, then it just becomes this little habit, and we don't have to put it in our calendar anymore or even think about it. It just happens automatically. And so this is the secret to getting anything accomplished, is to focus on just showing up and giving your best energy to this part of the process, this step right here. Okay. And then not worrying too much about what's ahead, because here's the thing. It's like, all you can see is what's in your headlights. Like, you know, there's a road ahead, but you don't really know where it's going. Like you think you know where it's going. You don't really know where it's going. And it might be going someplace much better than you could have ever imagined, than you could have ever even envisioned, because it wasn't even in your reality that this was a possibility.
Yeah.
But when you show up for each step of the process and really just enjoy it as much as you possibly can, play, right? Think of it as play rather than practice. Show up and play. Then here's what happens. A spoonful of sugar doesn't just help the medicine go down. It motivates you to show up for the next dose of medicine. And so you find yourself just showing up, eager to try new things, eager to experience fully this process. And then before you know it, you've got all these products that you never could have envisioned or imagined turning out the way they turned out when you started. Maybe you had an idea like, believe me, all these, like, let me tell you about this book right here. The core of this book, Release Your Masterpiece. I wrote this one chapter and it was called Attune Your Inspiration Antenna. And it's all the things we've been talking about, where it's like focusing on, you know, your physical body and your mental body and your spiritual body and all of these things that are interconnected, all these systems that need to be like holistically well in order for you to receive these wonderful ideas, right? Because when you are too focused on just like, oh, I don't feel good, that's all you can see, right? So then I wrote this whole book around that. And then I realized at the end, wait a second, this chapter doesn't even need to be here. This doesn't have to do anything to do with the rest of what I wrote here. And I think this is a whole other book.
Oh my gosh.
So I took it out 10 days before this book came out and I wrote Spark Genius, which is now that is the core of this book. But it was so interesting to me. Like I thought it was going in this completely different direction, but then I was like, nope, this is what needs to come first. It was paving the way for this.
Brilliant.
But yeah, but you don't know, you don't know until you open yourself to it and you just keep showing up for the process. And so writers, especially, they get in this thing of like, I have to write every day. No, you don't. You don't have to write every day. You're not going to get good stuff if you write every day. Now you can do a brain dump every day where you just like get whatever, is like gumming up the works out of your brain by like, free writing for like a minute. Okay, cool. Yes. But writing actual useful pages, no, stop doing that. You need to like look at the whole cycle and show up for each part of that cycle fully before you can move on to the next part of the cycle. And when you do, then it just pours out of you. It's like channeling. All you got to do is just sit down and be open to it. And it's like, blah, 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 it just comes right out of you. And then you look back on it and you go, okay, let's take this part out. Let's use this. Let's do that. Once you've made a mess, then you can do something with it. But until you have a mess, you don't have anything. So you got to give yourself permission to do it badly the first time. I call the first draft the worst draft. Okay. Because it's inevitably going to get better from there.
Yeah.
So just accept
anything in life, right?
Everything. The first time you do it, it's gonna suck. You have to be willing to suck at something in order to get really good at something. You have to be willing. Like that. Maybe you're just magical and you just have a special talent for it. And you're one of those prodigies who just sits down at a piano and can like play a symphony. Cool. But you had to be willing to suck at it, to even sit down at that piano and try.
Yeah. So true. I love that. Wow. And I was going to say like which book, but you mentioned two of them. I mean, you have like the listeners on the podcast, you'll see it on the YouTube, but like you can't even see how many books she has behind her. It's a lot. It's a lot. I was like, how many books do you have? My goodness.
So these are my solo books. And we have another one coming out on May 16th. This is the one for kids called This Will Not Be on the Test. Because I worked with a bunch of middle school kids and high school kids on a summer program. And I was just so saddened by the difference between the middle school kids and the high school kids. The middle school kids were still so curious, so excited, so enthusiastic. The high school kids were already like, if this isn't on my college transcript, I'm not interested. And it broke my heart. And the products that they came up with, night and day, right? So imaginative, so interesting, so resonant, so like emotionally alive, so boring, so derivative,
Mhm.
so like what they think I want to see.
Mhm.
Right. And so I wrote this book to try to help bridge that gap and say, okay, maybe we can hold on to that creative spark a little bit longer.
Mhm.
Maybe we can help kids going through high school to not let go of their natural creativity so that I don't have to teach them in their 30s and 40s how to get it back.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, I'm experiencing that. I have twins. They're 15 and
Mm-hmm.
going on 16, and they were regurgitating formulas in the car this morning for their math test, and I have a chemistry test tomorrow, and it's just like their little like you said, the data is going in and is coming back out, and that's like there's no room in their little brains to be, for insight. It's just all output
Exactly.
of what's come in. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I always love to bookend and I could talk forever. I mean, you were just such a dynamic speaker, and I'm learning so much from you and getting so inspired, and I'm sure the listeners are as well. So I'm sure this episode could go on and on, but we could always have a part 2 in the future. But number one, I'm going to make sure everyone gets your books, like at least one book. I know I am. I'm going to go peruse all your books, but on a personal level, do you have a morning routine?
I sure do.
And what is
So
it?
the first thing that I do as soon as I wake up, like as soon as I am aware of being awake, I say to the universe, send me surprises and delights today that I couldn't even have imagined. Show me how good it can get. And then I get up and I look in the mirror and I high five myself.
Mm.
And then when I'm in the shower, usually, or like, as I'm getting ready, I just try to think about what's my intention for this day. What energetically do I want to show up with in my day today? So I make a difference between a goal and an intention. A goal is like where we're trying to get, like the destination, right? The intention is how do you want to feel along the way? How do you want to experience that journey? And so when I set an intention for the day, it's really like an energetic vibration that I want to radiate out for the rest of that day. So today, for example, my intention is to radiate inspiration, that I really wanted to inspire and motivate your listeners today. And so that was the intention that I came with when I sat down for this interview. So that's my morning routine. I do try to do some stretching if I have time. I don't always have time.
Sound very productive. I don't even like those words, like
Right.
productive.
I say procestive.
There you
Procestive.
go.
That's my new word, right? Because
You
it's
get a
really
lot
about
done.
enjoying my process.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, if I have time, I try to do something physical. I do a little stretching. I do a little Pilates, something like that, to kind of get myself physically ready for the day. But I don't always have time. Sometimes I have to take my kids to school. I got stuff going on. But doing those three things really makes a difference, I find, in terms of my mindset for the rest of the day. One thing I do weekly is that I have a little manifestation movie that I watch. So it's this little slideshow that I put together of images that are really resonant for me and some music that really resonates with me. And so then I just watch it and it immediately kind of like reminds me of like, this is my core desired feelings. This is what I'm trying to create in the world. And it's like instantaneous. I used to do it every day, but then it kind of became invisible to me. Like my brain started to tune it out.
Yeah.
I found. And so I was like, okay, too much. So I do it once a week now. I have my Friday routine. And I've got I also have little things that I do throughout the week. Like I have thank you Thursdays. So thank you Thursdays is when I send little thank you notes to people who have done something that like I appreciated during the week.
So nice.
And those little routines really help me, like I said, stay in my process and enjoy the process.
I love that. How about at night? Do you do anything special in the evening?
Honestly, I've tried and tried to have an evening routine and it always just kind of falls apart. I'm a morning person. So like by the evening, I'm so fluffy brained. You know what I mean? Like, so I try to, be grateful and think about, appreciation for like what happened during the day. But like a lot of the time I'm just like, let's just watch a show and go to bed. Like
perfect. Yeah, no. And
yeah,
gratitude and celebrating your wins throughout the day. That's important because
Yeah.
So many women just literally fall into bed at night, and then they're beating themselves up of what they didn't get done on their list, and they they didn't celebrate all of the 50 things they did get done. They're just focusing on the 2 things they didn't get done. So like,
Exactly.
I just love that, that
Another,
gratitude.
another weekly routine of mine is that I find one thing to celebrate, one thing to iterate, and one way to integrate that into my routine. So I look back at the week and I say, like, what's worth celebrating? What happened that like I can really focus on and celebrate and hold up? Because so often we don't take the time to just look at like what went well, what can I celebrate? Then I look at something that I want to do differently next week, like one tiny little tweak, like, oh, I want to stretch more, or I want to, I'm going to get up like a little bit earlier, or whatever it is, just like one tiny little tweak. And then the way that I'm going to integrate that is like, how am I actually going to make sure this happens? So like, am I going to set my alarm a little bit earlier? Or am I going to, give myself a reward, a specific reward for like, if I stretch, then I get this special reward afterwards. Because if we have something to look forward to, then we will show we are kids at heart, right? Like treat your inner child the way you would have wanted to be treated, right? Rewards rather than punishments.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Final question. What's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew 5, 10, 15, 20, however many years ago you want to go back, but what's that like one thing that you can share with the listeners that you wish you knew that you know now?
Yeah. That I can be trusted. That my authentic energy is valuable unto itself. And that just showing up as myself is enough. And that when I want something, it's worthy of wanting it. It's worthy of my energy being put into it. That I can trust my own intuition and my own desires. That I am trustworthy. I want to say one thing though. This is really important. Okay. We often mix up desire and compulsion. And here's how you can tell the difference. A compulsion is when you want to relieve an uncomfortable feeling. So let's say, you're scrolling through your phone, or, you're drinking, or whatever it is that you do to try to like help take the edge off, right? It's because of an uncomfortable feeling that you're trying to avoid. And avoidance is always a bad idea. And so if you're thinking like, well, my desire is telling me that I want to go, binge drinking, like, no, your compulsion is telling you that you want to go binge drinking because you're trying to avoid the thing that is really trying to get through to you, which is probably a desire that you have suppressed because you don't think it's possible. Because it feels like heartbreak now, because like, it's love with nowhere to go. It's grief now because you have blocked it off and you have blocked yourself off from giving yourself that love. And so when we really get in touch with true desire, it lights us up from the inside. Just thinking about it, it lights us up from the inside. And so if it makes you feel like, oh, I would feel relieved if that happened, that ain't it, kid. Keep digging. It's under there.
Oh, that's so good. So good. Well, now my listeners are all like, okay, where are you? Where can we binge? Speaking of binging on your stuff, where do you hang out? Do you hang out anywhere on social media? Where can we get your book?
Of course I do. Yeah. So I have a Creative Flow forecast pretty much every day on TikTok at Creative Flow Unleashed. And you can find the same thing on Instagram at Creative Flow Unleashed. You can also find me on my website, which is ADRIEMAC, audriemac.com.
Love that. So good. And do you have anything special coming up anytime? I mean, I know you have your book coming out.
I do. I have that book coming out May 16th. I'm also starting a new mastermind program to help people really tap into their authentic authority. This is something I hear from my clients all the time, especially women. They have a really hard time accepting that they are an expert in a thing, that they are an authority in this subject. And so I've created this whole program to really help you define, like, what is my special thing? What do I want to be seen as? What do I want to be known for? And to create a brand that really resonates that easily so that you don't have to constantly tell people, I do this, I do this. They just know.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good. Well, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I thank you for sharing your wisdom and inspiring all of us. I know it's interesting as you're talking, I'm like, okay, I rarely listen to my episodes like again and again, but this is probably gonna be one episode that I will probably listen to again and again. Like, I don't know if I ever, I will go back and listen to older episodes, but yeah, I don't generally listen to my episodes. So just because I soak it all in during the interview, but you said so many good things. There's so many little nuggets throughout this entire conversation that I need to go back and listen again for my own inspo. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Badass Tay. The badass in me recognizes the badass in you.
Thank you. And with that, I'm out of here. Talk to you again soon.